biology and control of American cockroach, all on this edition of the Pest Geek Podcast.
Pull out your hose and grab your can. We're about to integrate another Pest Geek Podcast. Hi, everybody. Frank Hernandez here, and welcome to the Pest Geek Podcast, bringing you the latest information on pests, products, and politics from today's leading industry sources to help you start, manage, and grow your pest control business.
Hey, welcome back. Welcome back to another edition of the Pest Geek Podcast. I am your host, Frank Hernandez, here every week discussing all things pest. We're going to be discussing the biology and control of American cockroach. Periplaneta americana. That sounds really good. I mean, it sounds like something I want on a sandwich. But this is also known as the large roach, the palmetto bug, the palmetto roach, and the water bug. And it's a very common bug down here in South Florida for us. It's all over pretty much the U.S. It's just not as plentiful in some parts as it is in others. And we're going to be discussing everything that involves this cockroach, because if it's one thing that we need to do as pest control professional is know our bug, know exactly what they do, how they behave. That's what biology of pest is all about. And the reason I bring this up is because when I first started, it was, I don't know how long it was before I even heard of a biology of a roach. I mean, I was in it for a year and I didn't get taught anything. So I know there's a lot of guys out there that I'll talk to them, I'll meet them, and they're struggling controlling American cockroaches. And I'm like, explain to me what you understand about this roach. And they really don't know much. I mean, a lot of people just don't know a whole lot of biology. And I take things for granted sometimes on the podcast, and I'm afraid sometimes to insult some of the listeners' intelligence. But I think that if you look at it this way, that sometimes it's good to be reminded of things that we might have forgotten, things that we haven't even kept in the back of our mind. One of the things that I get all the time is when I get a customer on the phone and they tell me what roach they have. I've got a palmetto bug. I got a water bug in my house. But I also got one of those Germans, and they don't know the difference and why. And when they're calling me and saying, I need you to come and spray my house for palmetto bugs because I've never had them, and all of a sudden I got them this year, and they're all over the place. And we have to go into a conversation about what their expectation is with one service spray, that somehow my super duper service spray in my silver can is going to solve this problem. And we don't know. And I have to get into a whole investigation of why it's been happening. So we're going to get into this and talking about everything about this roach, because this is going to be vitally important for you to be able to communicate to your clients of, how many times do I get a customer that tells me I've had 3 companies or they can't control this roach. We've had it now for a year, 2 years, 3 years. They've been dealing with this. They've got, boric acid all over the house. They've got those large over-the-counter stations they bought. I mean, they fogged, they've done everything, and they're still dealing with this. And really the solutions to this is quite simple. It's not that hard to get control of this bug. But a lot of people seem to be struggling. And I said, well, if I'm getting so many companies that are not solving this problem, those are triggers in my mind that says, people are really not understanding what's going on. So let's start looking at the reproduction and eggs and mating of this cockroach. And by the way, this podcast, I got asked by one of the members of the group, and I started a new group, by the way. If you don't know this, I debated it for 2 years whether I should start a group or not. And I decided to start a group for the listeners of this podcast so we can discuss just about this podcast and the issues that we're facing, the things I'm bringing up, what they would like to listen to, things I can't discuss in somebody else's group. I mean, I don't think it's appropriate for me to be discussing my podcast, promoting my podcast. If somebody has a question And in the past, I probably out of, 100 or 200 comments, I will mention the podcast because it's a lot easier. They have a question about something. It's a lot easier to say, look, I actually did a podcast, and that'd be easier if you just listen to it than me go into a long explanation. But I decided to open up the podcast for that reason. The group, for that reason is, hey, the people that have been listening to me, the friends, the people that have emailed me, IM'd me and became my friends on Facebook, we got a place where we can discuss it and discuss it, about what you heard. And if you disagree with me, it's okay. It's okay for you to disagree with me. I don't get offended because people disagree. A lot of this on this podcast is a lot of my opinion, a lot of my experience. So if you find something, you say, yeah, you missed this, and maybe you can, I always bring out a lot of studies. And if you find another study that contradicts it, let's discuss it. I think it's healthy. My position on discussions, my position on arguing, I am a debater. I am an arguer. But I argue from the perspective of coming to the truth and coming to an understanding, not argue from the perspective that I want to impose my view or my thought on you. I'm giving you what I know. If you disagree, I'm more than happy to listen to you. So that's one of the reasons so one of the listeners said, I would like to know about American Cockroach. Well, obviously there's a need there. So I went ahead and I did it, because if one person's asking for it, they have a need. And this podcast is to help people grow, and that's what it's all about. And we're going to be doing a lot more training than you expect or ever thought about that we would be doing on this podcast. And the reasoning also is that, I take for granted that I get a CEU class, 6 hours of CEU, actually almost 8 every year. In some parts of the country, people are not getting CEUs for 2 to 3 years. And most of the time, that's the only training they ever get. So there's a huge need out there for this kind of training. Training that is free, training that is accessible, training that people can use and share, and also use to help their clients. That's what we started out to do. I believe that I've fulfilled my brand promise on this, and we're going to continue to do that. But dealing with this cockroach, this cockroach is not as prolific as the German roach, but it is very prolific. And at the peak of her productive period, can form up to 2 oothicas, 2 egg casings per week, in 1 week after mating. And typically she can produce it between 3 and 7 days. All right. So in the peak, you're talking about, 8 oothicas in a month that she can produce. On average, the female can produce an egg case, capsule oothica, usually a month for 10 months. Okay. So, that's on average. So if they live a long time, they live, as much as 2.5 years on average. But a female can produce between 15 and 90 egg capsules in her lifetime. So it all depends. Why does it depend? Well, it depends on temperature. It depends on where these things are in the world. Averaging 12 to 16 eggs per egg case, per egg capsule. Now, the egg case, the egg, and the egg the egg case, the capsule, the oothica is one thing, and the eggs that are actually in there being protected is another. So you're talking about an average of 12 to 16 roaches, with about 50-50 mix of female and males being born. Okay. Now, the length of the egg stage can vary between 29 and 58 days. So in other words, how long is that those nymphs are in there incubating? Between 29 and 58 days. Now, at room temperature, hatching occurs usually between 50 and 55 days. Okay. Now, their temperature preferences. Here's why we have such an abundance of them in Florida. They range from 70 to 85 degrees. This is our outdoor temperature year around. We're right now in the 40s and 50s at night, which is rare. This will happen for like a couple of days and it'll be gone, and we'll be in Christmas and it'll be 85 degrees in the daytime. We are very moist environment, very humid, wet pretty much throughout the year. We're subtropical, known as neotropical. So if you're along the border of the southern border of the United States, you probably experience them more than if you're in the northern part of the United States, or if you're in a very dry area of the United States. Now, they can survive in temperatures above 15 degrees. In other words, they can't survive below 15 degrees. So if you've got a refrigerated unit in a warehouse, you can have American cockroaches in there breeding because they can survive in there. Now, generally, they'll deposit the eggs, the casing, the ooth, near food sources, gluing them to surfaces from oral secretion. They produce it in their mouth and they stick it. Unlike the German roach that carries their egg almost till it hatches. I mean, we've got pictures of them, eggs hatching while they're still attached to the mother. Now, the eggs have a lot of moisture in them. And they usually will have enough water in the eggs to develop them without having to receive any additional water. So, if she deposits the egg, even if it's in a dry area of the home or the building, you can still have, I've seen a lot of eggs being deposited in you look up in the ceiling at a where the dumpster is, and they're in there. You go underneath a building and an electrical closet, and you'll see them inside the electrical closet. They're in laundry rooms. So they can pretty much do it anywhere they want to. Behind the wall in a home, in an attic, somewhere, they can stick that thing anywhere they want to. It's usually going to get laid, though, near water. They need water when they're born. They're going to be near water. Now, the egg casing, what does it look like? Well, it looks it's brown. It becomes a dark mahogany brown. It almost looks like a purse, like a woman's hand purse. That's what it looks like. And it's brown. It's got even the little stitching along the edges where it's glued. And, it'll turn dark brown, dark mahogany. It's usually about 1/3 of an inch long by about 1/4 of an inch, a little bit less than 1/4 of an inch small. So that gives you a reference point. I'm going to have some pictures in there in the blog. By the way, I got 3 great links to 3 great reports. If you are in pest control right now, you just started in pest control, and you say, what resources can I use? And you don't know, your best resource is going to be your university entomology department. Mine was the University of Florida's forever. Because I didn't know what to buy. There was no Facebook groups. There wasn't anybody online selling resources when I started. That was my only resource, and I consumed, a ton. Some of those reports were 10 pages long. And so you don't really need a malice guide that costs you $70. It'd be nice to own one. But everything I learned it from reading those sheets from the university for free online. The Malice Guide was really great. It still is a great resource to have on your desk. I have one. I also have pest control operations that Purdue produces. I've got one of those. I've got the field guide. I've got a bunch of books on pest control, but for the longest time, I didn't need them. And then I bought them, and I said, it'd be cool to own one. And I said, but, most of the stuff is the same stuff that's on these reports. So, you got 3 great ones there to pull and look at and have and treasure for yourself. Now, the first instars, here, the molting stages. So the molting stages, when they are born, can be between 6 and 14. Usually around 7 molting stages. But it can be that many. When they're first born, they're kind of whitish when they come out, and they become grayish brown. Then when they're becoming subsequent instars, they will go from white to reddish brown. They're grayish brown when they're first born, in their first instar, and then go to a reddish brown when they convert. They have the stripes along the back. Most people call me and tell me they have multiple types of roaches. They've seen little ones, they've seen big ones, they got all kinds of roaches. They only have one kind. They're just seeing them in different instars. And that, when I get into that conversation on the phone with people, that gives me a ton of info about how long this has been going on. Because remember, they have this long, so when somebody said this just started 2 months ago and you've got roaches in 5-6 different instars, no, this goes back, 15 months. This isn't something that just happened. All right, so that gives you an enormous amount of information about how long this problem has been going on. Wings are not present in the nymphal stage. There's no wings on them. Wing pads do not become noticeable at least until the 3rd, 4th instar. So we're talking several months in when this happens. From egg to adult, well, this can be as much, on average, 600 days. So you're talking, 2 years almost. It can be as little as 160 days, as long as 971 days. Again, this is going to vary. But look how long this roach lives. A person that tells me they got a bunch of adult roaches in their house and they got a bunch and they're coming out of everywhere and you're going in that house and you're seeing excrement from that roach everywhere. Some people confuse it with having mice. They tell me, I have mice. And I look and I say, no, you actually just have American roaches. You don't have mice. Thank God, that's a good news. The nymphs are, they actively forage for food and water. Okay. So they will, this is why baiting is so important. The number of offspring per year can average 800. Think about this. 800 offspring off of one roach. I mean, that's still pretty prolific. Not as much as a German, but still pretty prolific. Under ideal conditions, an adult female can live 15 months. An adult female, okay? So the lifespan is a long lifespan. From the time that they're born to the time they die, you've got 30 months easily. Males, surprisingly, live shorter lives. Go figure, huh? Even roaches have a shorter lifespan in males. But habitat, where do we got this habitat? Where do they live? Well, they're primarily a paradomestic species. What does that mean? That means that they generally live outdoors. However, they do come inside and populate buildings. When does this happen? Well, let's say they love humidity, they love moist areas, they love warm environments. If you provide that for them indoors, they can survive. They can survive in drier areas, but they have to be near water. All right, now, inside, they're going to be common in kitchens and baths. Hiding places, voids in the kitchens and baths. They got everything they need there. They got food, water, and a hiding place. A lot of people tell me, well, I can't have roaches in my bathroom because my bathroom is very, very clean. I said, they eat organic matter. And say, no, my wife keeps this bathroom immaculate. And then I take a mirror and I show them the inside of their toilet underneath where they never see it. And I said, you see all that in there in those little holes? All that is decaying matter. They got plenty of stuff to eat in here. And I open up the cabinet and there is roach excrement in the cabinet, but they've never seen one in the bathroom, but it's in there. So wood piles outside, decaying organic matter outside, hollow tree trunks, mulch beds, you name it. Manhole covers, if they're near the house. I get a lot of clients here that, call me panicking. All of a sudden we came back from vacation and we seen a dozen dead roaches and we're afraid there's more in the house. And what happens is they made it inside through the dried, P-traps, the U-traps in the toilets and in the underneath the cabinets, and they dried out and they were able to come in from outside. This is particularly a big problem for homes that have septic tanks here in South Florida. There's going to be millions of them in there. If you ever pull a septic tank, you're going to get all kinds of stuff coming out of there. They avoid extreme weather. This is why when it's very dry and all of a sudden it starts to rain, people start seeing them inside, specifically in garages. If you've got a garage door and that thing doesn't seal right, and 90% of them don't, and then you have the door that goes from the garage inside the house and that doesn't have a sweep on it, you need to do exclusion work for American cockroach because they're going to be constantly coming inside. I tell people all the time, listen, we need to put a threshold there, we need to put a threshold there, we need to put a sweep, we need to put something. We got to stop them from coming in the house, and they're easily coming in underneath that door. I mean, I look under there and literally you can stick your thumb under that door. So, that's what they're going to avoid. Feeding habits. Well, They'll eat anything. They'll eat glue, sugar, paper, binding from books, excrement, milk, meat. You name it, these guys will eat anything. So in a real environment where there's a problem with hygiene, a spray. And one of the things that I learned from a manufacturer that told me that if you've got a real, especially in commercial kitchens where there's a lot of oil on the floor, pyrethroids don't do very well where there's a lot of oils. And that's a problem. All right. So exclusion is the number one name of the game here. You have to be able to exclude. And if you have vents in the basement, crawl spaces, soffits, dryer vents, anywhere there's a hole, if it isn't sealed, you're going to have a continuous problem, especially with homes here we have in South Florida that are surrounded by shrubbery and mulch and decaying matter. And then you've got crawl spaces, so you're going to, if you got crawl spaces and those vents are open, they're going to get in. You got to be able to seal caulk around cracks outside, inside. We foam in those cabinets, underneath the cabinets, especially like in the AC closets. A lot of units here, have the ACs in different parts of the country. They'll have ACs in different places in the house. Here, the AC units are outside, and then the air handlers are in a closet somewhere. Some air handlers in other parts, they're in the ceiling. But all those holes have to be sealed. And it is the most funniest thing that I will talk to people, and they're dusting voids and they're dusting holes constantly in walls instead of just sealing them. Why are you going there every 2 months, every month, and dusting those voids? For what purpose? If you just would have sealed them, they have no way to get in. You want to dust, you want to bait behind there once, that's fine. We seal them every single time. I got people that tell me, we can't get control of roaches. I've had 3 companies, and I go in and say, yeah, look at all these holes. They're the size, a cat can fit through here. So you have to seal. Sealing is the number one natural pest control that you're ever going to do. Forget about product. Seal. Outside electrical boxes. They love going in through conduits. Make sure those electrical boxes, people, how many times did they remove the outlet? And they left the hole. They left the electrical box there with the cables sticking out. And everything is open. Get that sealed. Get those caps on. Okay, let's get into product. And let's get how we're going to use this. Great products. Baits are your number one solution. All right. Forget about spraying every single month. I get so annoyed with people that tell me, and I had just this conversation with my tech, and I said, I've heard that 1,000 times. Don't control everything, because then people will cancel on you. If you control everything, don't do such a great job. And that's what I see is I tell people all the time, if you're constantly spraying and you're seeing dead roaches, you're not getting control. You're killing. And control is one thing, but if every month, and I meet people all the time, so no, my customers are happy. Every month they're seeing dead roaches everywhere. I said, then you're not getting control. You're killing. You're deceiving yourself and thinking you're getting control. And you need to have a different training. The customer pays for control, doesn't pay for killing. So baits are your number one. Bait in the voids, underneath the cabinets, bait behind the wall, bait in the attic, bait in the crawl space. Bait and cracking crevices around the house. Get yourself a little paintbrush, the 1-inch paintbrush, and you can use Nyban Fine, Entice, and brush it into those little places, cracking crevices, and get it in there. Max Force Complete does a great job on American cockroaches. Nybordi. You got areas in kitchens that are very dirty, and you can't figure out, what you're going to do with all that grease because they just won't clean. Nybordi it in a liquid form. You can mop a floor with it. You can put it inside voids. You can put it in areas where there's grease and between the stove, and you pull that stove and there's like a blob of grease. You can put it in there. Cymexa will do a great job on any insect that you have in any void to treat with a dust. Roach gels are doing great. Entice roach gel and magnetic roach gel, boric acid bait. gel. We've been using it for American roaches. We're getting great results, especially for nymphs. Customers that complain that they're seeing a lot of nymphs, we will use that, and we get a very quick knockdown, usually within 30 days. What do you have to tell the client? If you look at the insect biology that we discussed, all right, and you see that this roach has an egg life cycle indoors of up to 55 days, and the customer calls you and says, I want you to do a one-time service, and they think because this just started 10 days ago, 3 months ago, it's going to be a nightmare for you to try to control it. You need to explain this life cycle to the client and help them understand that, listen, I can spray right now and you're going to see a lot of dead roaches. But 30 days from now, you're going to be seeing this. And what I do is I prepare the client mentally to what they're going to experience. Why? This is going to cut back on the callback. If the customer realizes they're going to experience nymphs in 30 to 60 days, and you know what I get? I give them, a 60-day, and I said, I'm going to come back in 60 days and we're going to start the preventive service. By then, this is what you're going to experience. And when I tell them this, when it happens, they're no longer shocked. They're saying, yeah, he told me about it. This guy really knows his stuff. When you know insect biology and you can prepare the client for what they're going to expect, what are going to be the symptoms, then the customer sees that you're truthful. You have to be truthful with the client. They understand that you're an expert. They understand that you know this. And then from that point on, you never get questioned. Why don't we have callbacks? We have follow-ups. We know when to follow up for a species. And we tell the client, you're going to have to wait it out. We've done everything chemically possible. Another great thing to use, Use IGR in every initial service. Even if you're not going to spray a synthetic, if you're using it with Nibor-D, use the IGR. If you're using it for crack and crevice with any other product, for crack and crevice, use an IGR. This is going to really, really help you guys understand. And identification is kind of hard to do on a podcast because that's visual. But, I believe if you want to see the cerces of a roach, you should be able to see a cerces of a roach. So there's pictures in all of these. Get familiar with what that roach looks like in different stages. And, I hope that this podcast is helping you grow. This podcast is making you a professional. This podcast is educating you. And if it is, hey, go ahead and go to the group. Sign up for the group. Go on our Facebook page. Also go on our website. The website is loaded with information. We're going to be putting a lot more info on that website that's going to help you grow. And hey, until next time, guys, you have a great one.
Thank you for listening to the Pest Geek Podcast. If you have enjoyed the Pest Geek Podcast, please give us a rating, write a review, or subscribe to the channel. You can join the Pest Geek Society by visiting pestgeekpodcast.com. Thank you for listening. See you next time.